As the calendar turns to April, the NFL draft is on the horizon. And for the New England Patriots, the opportunity lies ahead to use their 11 draft picks to fill out depth on the roster. From offensive tackle to edge rusher, off-ball linebacker, and tight end, the Patriots have several areas where they can ensure long-term stability and continue building around their young foundation. But who ends up making their way up Route 1 to Foxboro later this month? Today, we're going to be diving into just a few of the best fits. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Patriots Roundtable Podcast. Alongside Tyler Geis, I'm Eddie Murata, and today our preview of the 2026 NFL Draft continues with best fits for the New England Patriots. We'll be looking at players at key positions of need in every range of the NFL Draft, from pick 31 all the way down to day 3 sleepers. But before we dive in, Tyler, we're officially into the month of April, and the draft is now just a few sleeps away. How are we feeling about where the team is at this current point in their offseason roster build?
It's been a good roster build from March till now. I think we're just kind of counting down the days, you and I, to see really, you and I can prophesize and predict all we want here and hope that even some of these names that we talk about tonight, or even some of the names past the mock draft, become a New England Patriot. But I think you and I are just kind of eagerly counting the days, seeing where these players go, even if the ones that we're kind of hoping are Patriots don't become Patriots, still kind of see where they end up. A lot of names you and I have gone over, hundreds more that we haven't. So I'm eagerly waiting the end of the month. It's something I've had my eyes on for a while. I know I'm more of a free agency guy, and I kind of like to really kind of focus and see what's going on there. But quite honestly, I'm really, the more we've talked about this, I'm really into how this draft unfolds and see how these new guys, either if they're just kind of riding the bench for a year and see how they develop over their rookie season, or if they're right out there week 1 in September. Hyped to see. Hyped if some of these guys we talk about tonight are Patriots as well.
Yeah, 11 draft picks to work with, so we're definitely going to have our hands full trying to cover this when the NFL draft comes around. And certainly for the Patriots, mobility may be a key for them with where their draft picks are sitting. There's a chance that they move all around the board come April. That's exactly what they did in last year's draft when they were laying the foundation for this team that ultimately ended up going on a run to Super Bowl 60. And now this is kind of feels like part 2 of the build for the Patriots. They have the foundation, the pieces in place, and now they're looking to build around that, and a great opportunity lies ahead for them to do that in just a few short weeks here. This is a great time of year where it feels like, even guys that we talk about on day 3 and the 5th and 6th and 7th round could ultimately end up becoming key contributors on the roster. And certainly it doesn't always play out like that. But if any place in the league knows what it's like to have day 3 draftees become key contributors on their roster, it is New England. So definitely something to pay attention to as we get closer to the NFL draft, not just pick 31, but as we get later and later into the draft, how they choose to draft and develop those players, not just for 2026, but for 2027 and beyond. So we're going to dive in super deep on a few of these prospects here today. We have 5 each that we're going to look at as best fits for the Patriots come this month's draft. But before we get there, Tyler, one small bit of news for the Patriots that could ultimately end up leading us back to draft conversation here is that yesterday the New England Patriots planned on releasing linebacker Marte Mapu, a former 2021 third-round pick at safety that ended up converting down to play in the box full-time as a linebacker for this team. Never really seemed to catch on. He ends up ultimately getting traded to the Houston Texans along with a 2027 7th-round pick for a 2027 6th-round pick. So just a way to perhaps get some value back for a player that you were planning on letting go of anyways. A team like Houston comes in, they don't want to deal with bidding against other teams in free agency, and they pick up Mapu for a 6th-round pick next year. What do you make of this trade in terms of what it means for the Patriots and where they're at right now with the linebacker position in general?
They've cleaned a lot of house in that region of the roster, I would say. So I kind of see this as a move to make some space for potentially what they're going to do in the draft. You and I may or may not have some linebackers on our list tonight as well. You mentioned Mapu starts as a safety. It kind of evolves into a linebacker at last season at some point. I put up a piece yesterday when the news broke, when he was just being released. And then later that night, you find out he's being traded to the Texans. So slight change of pace there, I guess. But I think he had a lot of versatility. I don't have too much to harp on him about. But he was a good third down. I think I used him a lot on third down as a linebacker. Great against guarding the pass and whatnot. So I don't know where he fits into the Texans defense. That's for a Texans podcast, I guess you could say. But this does kind of seem like a warning sign to me that the Patriots are just making some more room to see where they can get depth at that position, but most likely in the draft. There are some good linebacker names out there coming up in the draft. We'll probably talk about tonight. But yeah, again, just making room. We saw them do it on the offensive line a couple weeks ago as well. So yeah, that's just what it looks like to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this is more a testament to how the Patriots view the linebacker class that they have coming up in the draft and the depth of that linebacker class, because we are certainly going to talk about some players that they could target early on in the draft, but there are also players that go into day 3 of this draft class that could grow into contributors. You certainly have your full-time starters already in Robert Spillane and Christian Ellis, but this is a position group, Tyler, that is almost leaving the cupboard barren after this season. Only Robert Spillane will be under contract for the Patriots past the 2026 season with the way that their linebacking core is currently constructed. So they may want to attack the draft for long-term stability at linebacker. We'll certainly talk about a couple of those options here tonight. And I think in terms of what this means for Marte Mapu, he never really caught on in New England through now 3 coaching regimes. He was brought in the Belichick era as a box safety who ultimately ended up only being able to really play in the box. He wasn't very reliable in deep coverage. So you move him down, and he's a hybrid linebacker that's a little bit light for the position, but brings great height and length for that position, and he just never was as reliable a run defender as you would hope him to be, which is why, as you mentioned, he was basically restricted to playing in passing situations on 3rd and longs, where he did see some good time for the Patriots over the last couple of years, but never ended up evolving into a more full-time player. So he was going into an expiring year on his contract, the last year of his rookie deal, and they find a way to not only move off of him, but get something at least back in the 2027 NFL draft. And an interesting note there, Tyler, we've talked a lot about the 11 picks that the Patriots have this year. They also have 9 draft picks now next year that they can work with, even in late round trades this year. I don't think that there's 20 extra roster spots to fill out with the way that their roster is currently built. So those could all be trade chips, not only for pick 31 if they decide to move up or move back there, but a little bit later in the draft if they decide in the 2nd or 3rd round, okay, we really want to move up. We've identified a player that really fits our culture, and we don't want to take the chance that 10 more picks goes by and somebody else grabs this guy before we do. They certainly have the ammunition now to go and make some moves around the board with a Mapu trade. But even before that, they're certainly going to be on the move in this draft, and it's going to be exciting to watch, just as it was last year when we saw them get contributors even into the 4th and 5th round with guys like Craig Woodson. So a lot to cover here, and that's kind of where we're going to transition now, is to our best fits for the Patriots in the 2026 NFL draft. And Tyler, when we were kind of going back and forth on this a little bit and setting this as the topic matter for this week's episode, I kind of left it purposefully open-ended for the reason that I think that there are plenty of guys that we could talk about being in range for the Patriots at pick 31. But as I mentioned before, this is a team that got contributors into the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th round with all of their draft picks last year. So we do want to take a look at some of these day 3 prospects as well. We're definitely going to do that. We have a special section designated for that at the end of the episode. But I think a good mix here for us of talking about what the Patriots could potentially do with that first round pick, and then moving into day 2 and day 3 of the draft, how that decision may impact their next 2-3 rounds worth of decision making after that point. So I'll let you tee things off here, Tyler, with your first player that you identified here as a best fit for the New England Patriots in the 2026 draft.
Well, it looks to me like I wanted to go back to Clemson, which I know a lot of people didn't seem to. I mean, they didn't really have that great of a season. So a lot of people like to say, is Clemson really going to be that good in the draft? And I mean, you and I have talked about TJ Parker a lot, I must say. Edge rusher out of Clemson, a lot of dip in production in his senior year. But, again, Clemson was Clemson in 2025. I just kind of want to go over a couple things. He's a very power-based rusher with off the edge, which I think is kind of what we're seeing with what they brought in off of Draymond Jones, I believe, just a little more powerful physicality. I don't know how that's going to be, having both guys like that on both ends of the field there. But I just like this kid in general. I watched a few highlights of him before I got on here, just to kind of like keep him fresh in my mind, because he was going to be the one I was going to kick off the show with here. 4 years out of his time in Clemson, 2023, immediate impact for them with 32 tackles, All-American honors. Sophomore year breakout with 11 sacks and a school record of 6 forced fumbles. 2025 does have a dip though, with 5 sacks on opposing teams, but again, it's the 2025 Clemson. It's 2025 Clemson. A lot of people, have their nitpicks about it. Whatever. A lot of people want to take him probably early 2nd round. Is the kind of the vibe I'm getting out of what I've been reading. I could see the Patriots utilizing the 31st pick on him, and waiting for something else, maybe in terms at linebacker or in the secondary in the 2nd round. I just think he kind of fits into the mold of a real good guy right up there in the mix and in the trenches that Vrabel can develop over the next 4 or 5 years. And he just seems like a Patriot guy to me all through and through. Ran in an unofficial 4.68 40-yard dash with a 1.62 10-yard split. I think he's got a great athleticism, great size. I'm impressed. I don't know if you have anything more to delve on him. I know we've talked about, I don't know if we picked him in the mock draft out of the 3 ones. He has been in the conversation a lot. So we did, right? I know we talked about him last week.
Yeah, we picked him in our last one in mock draft 3.0. He was our first round pick. And Tyler, just to kind of piggyback off of what you were saying there, this is a player that before the 2025 season kicked off was in every single top 5 or top 10 pick in the NFL draft discussion. So as you're saying here, this is a guy now all of a sudden that we're talking about in the late 1st, early 2nd round. So you could be getting some great value on a player that had a down year, but especially in 2024 showed flashes of elite high-level play. You're not sacrificing size with a player like this. He gives you speed. He gives you power, all of the different tools. He can be an elite pass rusher on your team and still be stout in run defense. So he would profile as a 3-down player for the Patriots that, once again, less than a calendar year ago, we were sitting here talking about him as a top 10 pick potentially in this draft. So the value for the Patriots to be able to sit at pick 31 and for him to potentially still be available for them when they're on the board, I think is immense value. And I think that's why I was so okay with us going with him in the first round of mock draft 3.0, because we just haven't gone to this point through a lot of these simulations where he was still on the board for the Patriots at that point. I do think it's a position group, and I'll touch on this on some of my guys later on, that you can get value in the 2nd or 3rd round with another edge rusher that may not give you everything that TJ Parker profiles to give you, but will be one slice of the pie for Vrabel as he constructs this edge rusher rotation for 2026. So I really like TJ Parker, and if he's on the board, I think that he's a slam dunk pick for the Patriots. Anything more that you want to add on him before I kind of flip sides here and go with my first pick?
Just one final thing, a point that I think you and I brought up in the weeks after the Super Bowl loss with just how great the Seahawks run game was against this defense. And you saw slivers of that kind of throughout the playoffs too, like that there was maybe some struggle against the run. He's considered an effective, reliable run defender with a high motor. Guy knows how to use his hands and just push offensive linemen off of him. And I think the fact that the last game Mike Vrabel is engraved in Mike Vrabel's mind right now is the Super Bowl, and he's got to be looking at how can I get somebody to stop the run, especially on the edge. Besides whoever you're about to bring into the conversation right now, who better than TJ Parker, frankly? So I think this is a good, solid way for them to pick off. He's to kick off this thing. He's been one of my favorites, throughout our mock drafts. He just kind of keeps coming up over and over. And we obviously went with him last week. So the fact that you didn't mention when you texted me earlier, I think that was my key to go with him.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have an edge rusher for you, but I'm going to hold on that for a little bit of a later show tease here from me, because I want to stick with Clemson, but I'm going to go on the other side of the ball and with Blake Miller as an offensive tackle prospect at the tail end of the first round. And Tyler, just as we kind of kick things off with my first selection here, I want to walk it back a little bit and talk about how exactly I came to this determination and what my strategy was moving forward with our 5 best fits. And I wanted to pick a player, one in kind of each range the Patriots were picking. I think that this could be best case scenario for the Patriots at pick 31 overall to go out and take a tackle, because as I mentioned before, the edge rusher class does have players that you can go out and acquire in the 2nd or 3rd round of the draft and still bank them as immediate contributors along that edge rusher rotation for the Patriots this season. Offensive tackle, once you get past this first wave of tackles that goes at the tail end of the first round, there is slim pickings from 2nd round all the way to the end of the NFL draft, and a lot more projection with those players. And for the Patriots, there are questions technically at both tackle positions right now, depending on what camp you're in on Will Campbell. I'm certainly a Will Campbell believer, but that doesn't mitigate the fact that on the other side of the line of scrimmage, across from Will Campbell, sits Morgan Moses, who enters his age 35 season, and last year was extraordinarily healthy for the New England Patriots. He played in all 17 regular season games, every single game in the postseason. But Tyler, that was his first full season played since 2022. And I don't think that you can comfortably walk into the 2026 season expecting Morgan Moses to have that type of repeat performance. So even if it's just for 2027, that's great. That means everything worked out swimmingly health-wise along the offensive line. But more likely than not, you're going to have a player that can step in spots for the Patriots this upcoming season along the offensive line. And I think Blake Miller profiles beautifully for this team. Over a guy like Maxi Hanator, even, who we could also talk about in this similar discussion. He's a little bit more raw. He's a player that's new to football, that didn't start playing until he was at JUCO. He was a former soccer and basketball player. All the traits are there. He may have ultimately a higher ceiling than a player like Blake Miller, but is still so raw. And again, just going back to, he's a little bit more projection, where Blake Miller brings proven production. This is a guy that played primarily right tackle at Clemson, and he started 54 career games for the Tigers. Tyler, he only missed one practice his entire Clemson career, and that was in the spring when he had a broken wrist. Otherwise, completely clean bill of health in terms of being available to be on the field for this Clemson Tigers team. And even with 54 games started, he's still only 22 years old. He went out at the NFL Combine and tested like an athletic freak. I think a little bit more so than what comes up when you actually watch the film, but the numbers say that he scored an RAS of 9.90 out of 10. He had a 5.04 second 40-yard dash with a 1.75 10-yard split. He put up 32 reps on the bench press and even an overall athleticism score, the next gen stats version of this that they use for a lot of the draft combine prospects. He scored a 91 out of 100 there. So he's an athletically a freak, one of these athletic freak profiles that we talk about. It feels like every week when we're looking at offensive linemen for the Patriots and what they're looking for, with picks last year of Will Campbell and Jared Wilson, adding Elijah Vera Tucker to play in the line between them at the left guard position. Blake Miller would go right along with that athleticism that each of those three players bring to the table. He's extremely quick, moving laterally. And unlike Will Campbell, the arm length is not a concern with the guy like Blake Miller. He has over 34-inch arms. He's got big hands, quick feet, and he moves up to the second level of the defense on combo blocks to get up to those linebackers in space with haste and with finishing power. When you put this guy on film, he plays with the violence that I think Mike Vrabel looks for from all of these prospects, both on the offensive line and defensive line. He's looking for that effort and finish, and Blake Miller exemplifies that along the offensive line. So for a lot of reasons there, I think he checks a lot of boxes. Now, this is a player that a little bit later on in the draft cycle here has started to climb up boards more and more. I've seen him go all the way up at 17 to the Detroit Lions in mock drafts, but more often than not, when we've been running through these simulations, he's been available for the Patriots at pick 31, and there is that precipitous drop-off in the tackle market once you get past him. So I think for the Patriots in the first round, as much as you don't want to draft for need, I think that this is a high-level replacement to shore things up along that offensive line for Drake Maye for years. And look, you're trying to avoid becoming the Cincinnati Bengals here, right? Who went to the Super Bowl. They had the previous record for sacks in a postseason run. They did little to nothing to shore things up in front of Joe Burrow. And that's been a consistent problem for them year over year. Don't make the same mistakes that the Cincinnati Bengals have made around Joe Burrow, even though it may not be the sexiest pick in the world. You're not going to find a tackle in this draft later on. Go out, fill the need. You're still going to be able to come back to edge in other positions a little bit later on. So for that reason, for me, Blake Miller is my first guy as a best fit for the New England Patriots here.
I like the pick. Obviously, going with Clemson first. I like the pick. But yeah, they have a lot of voids. No, I don't want to say voids. They have a lot of room to fill on that offensive line. You and I are both Will Campbell guys. We have a lot of faith in him going into year two. So I like the idea of going with that first, bringing in an offensive lineman second year in a row in the first round. All good on my end, friend. So yeah.
All right, you got number 2 for us. I know you have another edge rusher if you want to keep that going, because I'm going to give you my guy next.
I actually was going to just keep it going with an edge rusher. Forgive me here as I kind of glance. I'm just still getting on my notes kind of in. But I do have edge rusher in Zion Young out of Missouri lined up for us. He started his career at Michigan State, played 20 games, 11 starts, recording 47 tackles and 2.5 sacks. But there is a lot of he kind of is a bit of a hothead, you could say, to speak. He had a post-game altercation back in 2022. There's some off-the-field stuff that I don't really want to harp on too much, because part of me kind of thinks, again, I look at it from a Mike Vrabel perspective of him being able to kind of see someone like that. And it's not even just a Vrabel perspective. It's also a Patriots organization perspective. Let's take someone with a little bit of troublesome with them in terms of off the field and get them back on track. I could see them doing something with this kid in that sense. But I think he could really work well in Vrabel's system. If you, excuse me. But with that all kind of being said, he's regarded as a base end with potential for significant rotational reps, capable of playing inside or outside. Now, I don't know if they go with TJ Parker, not go with TJ Parker in the first round, if Zion Young would probably maybe go along with how your draft is going in terms of your first round pick, and maybe he sticks 6th round for the second round, because they're kind of saying Young's more of a second round ballpark area. I don't know what your notes are maybe telling you. Forgive me, my notes kind of keep vanishing on me here.
Yeah, he's right. He's right around that range at pick 31, maybe early second round. But he's certainly, I think he's been the most commonly mocked player to the New England Patriots at pick 31 because of that need at edge rusher. And I think, to go along with your point here, Tyler, he's more of an effective, at this point in his career, at least more of an effective run defender than anything that he gives you consistency-wise in the pass rush. I think there are all the tools there. I think the hesitation with me is he reminds me a little bit too much of a guy like Keyshaun White, that the Patriots just got through working with this past year and ended up dealing off to the San Francisco 49ers midseason, where he's a big athlete and he has all of the traits to be able to be an effective pass rusher, but is the tool bag quite there in terms of the hand usage and being able to use all of those traits on the field in a consistent down and distance situation there? I'm not quite sure about that with Zion Young. He's certainly a player that I looked at, but I kept walking away saying, man, this guy has everything there, but it just doesn't show up consistently enough for me with the 31st overall pick. So that's why I'm a little bit more hesitant on him. But I like, going with an edge rusher this early on in the draft. And I think that if not in the first round, maybe you take a tackle and he could be a trade target that you trade up for in the high second round if he starts to slip a little bit, like you mentioned, with some of those off the field concerns.
Yeah. Again, but elite run defender, 33-inch arms. I think he blends into what they're looking for, but I completely agree with you. There is a lot of inconsistencies in terms of who he is, but he just also kind of came off as coachable to me, but kind of going with two edges, it's a roll of the dice for me. So I get your point as well. But I think the edge class is looking pretty good. So I think there's just a lot of versatility this season with who you can go with. He's just always stood out to me over our mock drafts, so I thought I'd throw him into the mix. But I got some my next 3 ones I think are going to be able to show a little more versatility. I'm actually really excited about the one I'm going to go with next. But on to you, sir.
Love it. All right, so I'm going to stick with edge here, and kind of like I was just mentioning, maybe you draft your tackle in the first round. This could be a player that you identify in the second round as a player that you want to trade up for. I think that there's a big class of edges that are going to go in that early second round range, and some of these guys may start to slide. I think as a lot of these positions in the NFL draft, this becomes a flavors draft. What type of player or what style of player do you like? And Tyler, the guy that I have for you feels like a polar opposite from a couple of the guys that you mentioned in TJ Parker and Zion Young. And I'm going to try and explain this as best I can here with a guy in R. Mason Thomas out of Oklahoma that we haven't really talked a whole lot about through 3 mock drafts now on our show. And again, another one of these players that sometimes you may see him mocked at 31 to the Patriots. More often than not, he's one of these players that starts to slip a little bit deeper into the second round, and that's mainly due to size concerns. You've talked about very large defensive ends that are effective against the run, and that's not R. Mason Thomas. He stands 6'2". He's 241 pounds, and he is all gas, no brakes, Tyler. This is a player that is probably going to make his money on third downs in pass rush specialist situations, but I think that he's going to do way more for a team than just that. And even if that's how he begins his role in the NFL, I think that he's going to be extremely effective in it. And I think for a guy like Mike Vrabel, while some coaches may kind of turn away from a player of this size with those limitations at the edge, I don't think that's at all what you're going to see out of Mike Vrabel. Because if we just take a trip back in time a little bit to 2018, Mike Vrabel drafted a 6'2", 251-pound edge rusher that ran a a 40-yard dash of 4.64 seconds in the 40-yard dash, and that was Harold Landry III. So this is a player comp I would have to Harold Landry in R. Mason Thomas, where a lot of the things that Landry was great at coming out of Boston College, you see with R. Mason Thomas. He has a pass rush win rate in 2025 of 20.3%. He shows incredible bend to get around the edge and kind of run the loop around those offensive linemen, kind of like the drill that you see on the field at the NFL scouting combine. That's really what that's made to test. And R. Mason Thomas is a player that excels in those kind of positions. His get off is extremely fast. If you want to compare him to Landry, he had a 4.67 second 40-yard dash. So 0.03 seconds separating those guys in the 40. Very similar profiles. But the thing that I really like about R. Mason Thomas that you don't get as much of with other guys like Cassius Howell and Romello Height that profile similarly to him is that NFL patented speed to power, where he can get that quick get off of the line of scrimmage and convert that into a bull rush where he just runs straight through the offensive tackle. And having that smaller, compact stature for a guy like R. Mason Thomas actually helps him oftentimes win a leverage battle against these much larger offensive tackles. So yes, he's a little bit smaller, but he knows how to use all of his size to his advantage, both to get around the edge and just to maul straight through these offensive tackles. And he's a guy whose motor just runs straight through the whistle. Again, 2 picks in now for me in terms of best fits. And both of these guys, I think, profile as violent players that just play with that effort and finish mentality. I think that's going to be a staple for Mike Vrabel as he continues to build this team. And at least for me, on these 2 picks, I feel like I really hammered that home with both of these selections. So R. Mason Thomas, definitely a very different makeup, and I totally understand what you're saying about getting a bigger edge rusher that can set an edge in the run game. I think that's what you went out and signed Draymond Jones for. You have Harold Landry battling back from injury. You're hoping that he can get back to at least somewhat close to what he was pre-2025, but he's going to be on the wrong age of 30 relatively quickly here. You might be looking to future prep at that position, and R. Mason Thomas can kind of walk right in Harold Landry's footsteps as a player that profiles very similarly to him. So that's why he's my pick there for my second selection in best fits for the New England Patriots.
I like the pick. I think this is going to be the year Mike Vrabel definitely goes with an edge and kind of like proves it, makes a star edge in this draft for the Patriots. And, quite frankly, this is probably going to be whoever he picks is going to be the reason why. Look, this is why I didn't go after Max Crosby, for crying out loud. So to shift away from edge and offensive line, I almost lumped this guy into my day 3 sleeper picks because he is kind of projected for second, maybe third round, so to speak. But I wanted to go with a wide receiver because I talk about wide receivers a lot on this show. And I wanted to go with Chris Brazzell II. I said his name, right? Brazzell. Guy's a second-generation football player. His father, Chris Brazzell Sr., was in the NFL, and he also played in the CFL. He's out of Tennessee, but he started his career over in Tulane, redshirted 2022, then led the team in receptions and yards in 2023. I did an article for Roundtable a couple weeks ago, just kind of one of those articles you and I and everybody else have been doing, like, hey, this is why the Patriots would draft this guy, even if they aren't going to actually draft this guy. They, wide receivers are kind of a tall order for this early in the draft. I get that. But I think this kid's a stud. Then he transferred in 2024 to Tennessee, and he basically just broke out. And, especially in 2025, 62 receptions, over 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns, earning first team all SEC honors. If he can do something like that as a rookie, and probably can't with how that pool of receivers are, but if he can still have a breakout year among who may or may not be in that receiving pool for Drake Maye, I think the two of them, Maye and Brazzell, could have a lot of fun together. Elite vertical threat is one of his big strengths. He's a tall kid too. He's in the 94th 94th percentile in height, fast, 4.37, 4.48 on a 40-yard dash at the combine. And he's just developed a lot of deep ball tracking. He can be a great deep threat for Maye down the field, with the notion that maybe, Keyshaun Booty might not really kind of make strides forward this season. I'm not saying I hope that. I hope everybody kind of gets their due on the field. But, again, like, I don't know. I think he just kind of feels like a Patriot to me. I didn't want to go with KC Concepcion. I know we've talked a lot about him a little bit here and there. There's rumors that Buffalo has their eye on him as well. Areas of improvement, he kind of needs to improve when it comes to contested catches. This is why they're rookies. This is why, he'll be working with Josh McDaniels. He'll be working in probably one of the best offensive systems in the league currently, in my opinion. So I don't expect him to come to New England if he were to and have a full-on breakout year, but he's got the numbers and gives me a lot of confidence just kind of based off what I've seen, that in year 2, in year 3, there's just going to be big strides forward. And I've said on this show plenty of times, I think they need a wide receiver somewhere in the middle of the draft, somewhere at some point, 3rd round, maybe even. But if it were to get up kind of a little higher, and I know that's a tall order, that's a tall thing to say, I think this kid kind of fits the mold really well. And I think Drake Maye needs a young quarterback to develop with. There's guys that are potentially not going to be Patriots in 2027 that are on this team that are wide receivers. So I think, something now, whether he becomes a stud or not, works. I think is going to do wonders for him.
Yeah, I like Brazzell, and I like Brazzell a lot more than I've liked Tennessee receivers coming out into the draft in the past. I don't think that this is a guy that falls in line with them, where it feels like they're all height, weight, speed kind of guys, but they don't really run a real route tree in that Volunteers offense. So a lot of these guys like Cedric Tillman, Dante Thornton, they've really had a hard time translating to the NFL game. I think Brazzell is above the rest of the pack in that regard. And you mentioned he started his career at Tulane there, so maybe a little bit of a different offense then coming over, and he can kind of refine his skill set. He doesn't run every single route even the same way, which I think is an important thing when you're looking at NFL receivers. If you're showing a defensive back the same route 8, 9, 10 times in the same game, and you're running it the same way every single time, that defensive back's going to understand better and better how to defend you every single time you run that. So he's good at slight variations in his route running that allow him to create separation. And he certainly has that size, weight, speed that you look for in earlier round picks for NFL receivers. I think my one hesitation with Brazzell would more so be in the draft capital that you're spending on him, because I think that you're going to have to get him in the 2nd or 3rd round of this draft. Shoot, some people were even talking about him at pick 31, which I think is way too rich for a player like this with as many question marks as he has transitioning into the NFL. But are you going to spend a 2nd or 3rd round pick, Tyler, on a wide receiver if we're both in the camp here that AJ Brown is going to be a Patriot come the fall? Are you going to trade for AJ Brown and draft a guy like Chris Brazzell? I'm seriously, I would like to get your thoughts on that, because I don't put it out of the realm of possibility. Look, there are only 3 receivers that are rostered for the Patriots past the 2026 season. It's Kyle Williams, it's Romeo Doubs, and Efton Chisholm III. So you could take a receiver in the 1st round, and even if you add AJ Brown, there's your receiving core for the next 2 to 3 years at bare minimum. So I don't put it out of the realm of possibility, but it would make me feel a little bit uneasy with some of the other team needs that the Patriots have, that they would be spending that kind of premium draft capital on a player at this position if there was an opportunity to go out and get AJ Brown afterwards. I think that could be a big answer to this question, though, if they go out and draft a receiver early on in the draft. Where do you stand on that?
I mean, I think you and I both think that AJ Brown is going to be a New England Patriot in September. I think I'm also just coming at this from the perspective of what if something does swoop in? I don't know. I know there's the report going on that NFL executives are all basically saying he's going to be he's going to be a New England Patriot. Why can't I talk? But I don't know. I think I'm also kind of betting against it too. Like the further I go on, there's these more thoughts that just come in and out of my head. Like what what if somebody just swoops in? What if Mike Vrabel doesn't really want to go in that direction? I mean, there's also the piece I heard about, the piece I wrote that, what does it take for Stephon Diggs to potentially come back on a new deal? Are they going to give Diggs a 1-year deal in July? Are we going to get Diggs and AJ Brown? Are we going to get Diggs, AJ Brown, and Romeo Doubs? I don't know. I think I'm just coming at this from the perspective. I know they're not going to take this kid in the first round, but the kid should probably go in the first round, and who knows where that he'll end up. But I think I'm just coming at it from the perspective that if there was some sort of shift, so to speak, and if they wanted to maybe take him second round, if he's still sitting there, I wouldn't be surprised if the Patriots do that either. But I know I'm kind of not really being realistic about this, but I just like the kid. He felt like a good mix for out of that whole group in terms of wide receivers. I mean, none of these guys are really going to be around come round 4 or something. So I guess I'm just being hypothetical, so to speak, here with this one. I just love him.
Yeah, great route runner, and I think that he would profile to fit very well in with Drake Maye in the offense as a deep ball threat for sure. And it seems like that's exactly the type of player that they want to continue to fill the wide receiver room for Drake Maye with moving forward. So definitely not out of the realm of possibility. I just think for me, I am definitely in the AJ Brown camp. I also tend to side with you, though, that you need some sort of developmental talent in the room that's going to be able to grow with Drake Maye long term. I'm not going to get to that guy quite yet until we talk about our day 3 sleepers, because I think that's where you can attack some value, but certainly not a sure thing by the time you get down to the 6th and 7th round of the draft to find a guy that is going to become a legit 53-man roster candidate, especially in year 1 with this wide receiver class. So I like Chris Brazzell. I would rather see AJ Brown on the team here, and don't rule out the possibility of both, but I would prefer them to go with a tackle, an edge rusher. And then I'm going to actually flip sides of the ball here, Tyler, and stay on the defensive side with my next pick. And a guy that, again, we haven't talked a lot about on the show. And I was kind of flip-flopping things around with my list a little bit before we finalized things for the show. And I took one safety off. I put one safety on, and I was ultimately ended with Bud Clark out of TCU, a safety out of TCU, and a very different safety, I think, than a lot of the other safeties in this draft class, all the way up the top of the board with your guys like Caleb Downs, and right around the Patriots range in that bottom half of the first round, you have a guy in Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. Both of those guys profile more as box safeties or big nickels. I think that's what you get in rounds 2 through 4 through 5. Really late in the draft, you're going to start to see a lot more of these nickel or big box safeties start to come off the board. And in a draft class that's filled with those kind of players, Bud Clark, I think, is the zig to everybody else's zag. He is a deep roamer over the middle of the field at the safety position. And I think that's why I really like him so much, is because he contrasts so well, not only with the rest of this class, but with the skill sets that the Patriots' current safety room already brings to the table in guys like Kevin Byard and Craig Woodson that have both shown the ability to come down and play more in the box. You want a guy over the top of those guys that can kind of be your free roamer over that deep portion of the field. And Bud Clark exemplifies that. He is a fantastic kind of free roamer at the safety position. He has range to cover sideline to sideline, the speed and length and the jumping ability to do all of those things. When he was at the NFL Combine, he ran a 4.41 second 40-yard dash, a 38-inch vertical jump, a 10-foot 7-inch broad jump. He had an RAS of 8.85 out of 10, but it's not just the testing metrics for Bud Clark. You see this all over the film. Over the last 4 years, he accrued 15 interceptions, and he is so aggressive at the catch point, Tyler. He has the range to be able to close speed very quickly down the field, and when he gets to the ball, he plays it just as good, if not better, than the wide receiver that he's going against. He is a turnover generating machine, and he's a little bit too aggressive at points. I think that's where some of the drawbacks for him are on film, and that's why he's ranked overall as the 89th overall player on the consensus board, because when he gets beat, he certainly gets beat bad, and it's normally a big play down the field for the opposition if he guesses wrong, but he's a turnover generating machine and somebody that, once again, can complement the skill sets that the Patriots already have in the safety room very well. Last year, you had two guys in Jalen Hawkins and Craig Woodson that both played over 90% of the defensive snaps, and Kevin Byard certainly comes in as an upgrade in that room, but he comes in on a one-year deal. He's 33 years old, and I think Bud Clark profiles to be a fantastic understudy for a player like Kevin Byard to come in and work his way into the defense in substitution packages and then eventually take over as a long-term starter once you work out some of those kinks in his game. But he has all the athleticism. He has all the tape to prove that he could be a valuable piece on the back end of this Patriots defense. He's a three-time team captain at TCU. He's one of the older players on my list here, a sixth-year senior last year, but I think that he has enough proven production over the last 4+ years to absolutely warrant a selection in the middle rounds of this draft for the New England Patriots, right around the same range here as where they picked Craig Woodson last year. So Bud Clark, my third pick for best fits for the Patriots here. What do you think about that one?
I like it. When you brought him up, I did a quick little research on him this afternoon. 15 picks and 20 pass breakups in 4 seasons. He's a pretty solid, pretty physical dude. I mean, like you said, with Kevin Byard on a one-year deal, kind of have a veteran there to kind of show him some ropes and whatnot, and maybe he gets some reps on the field here and there. I think that's actually a good acquisition, and I am going to join you back on defense, and I'm going to go with a linebacker. So I wanted to bring in Keyshaun Elliott out of Arizona Sun Devil. Yes, sir. So just kind of going down some of some points here. Played in 13 games, starting 8 of them, finished with 65 total tackles, 5th on team. Well, before I actually go into that, harping back on I completely misstepped there. Harping back on how we kicked off the show, obviously the Patriots might be making some room for in the linebacker room, and I feel like this is kind of a good time to draft a linebacker and have this conversation. Elliott just jumped out at me in just terms of his physicality. So played in 13 games, starting 8 of them. Finished with 65 total tackles, 5th on the team, 4.0 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks with adding up an interception, 2 pass breakups. I also just kind of want to go back into some of his past, because I know this doesn't affect how the Patriots really want to draft him, but maybe it does. I was watching the Kevin Costner Draft Day movie. It's these little things sometimes, and he does actually have he has a Super Bowl winner in his family as well. His cousin, Linval Elliott, played with the Cincinnati Bengals and the San Francisco 49ers, winning Super Bowl 26 with the latter. He's a 3-sport athlete at a Richmond high school, played baseball, football, and he ran track, won the Missouri State Championship. So in a 4x200 relay, also a member of the Academic All-Conference, and graduated with honors. He is a good student. He's a smart kid. Strikes me as very, very smart. But it's kind of stuff like that I just read about that I was like, I don't know, like just kind of a cool backstory like that. Maybe they want to bring in somebody really smart like that, bring in someone really athletic at the position. With what the linebackers position could look like in 2027, we don't really know yet. There's some age right now in that region. So to bring in a young guy, bring in a smart guy, bring in a multi-talented physical guy, I like it. 5 games with 7+ tackles, including a 12 tackle performance on the road win over Texas State. 8 tackles in the college football playoff game against Texas in the Peach Bowl. Just an impressive overall kid. His 13 tackle loss for no gain on the season were 41st among excuse me, linebackers and 5th among Big 12 linebackers. I don't know. I just really like the kid. Kid jumped out at me. I know Vrabel was at Arizona recently, and I think that's why I just started to kind of connect the dots. And I was going through maybe what he may or may have not saw. I know he was working with the offensive lineman there, but we also don't know what cameras didn't see him with what he had his eye on. But the fact that Vrabel it was the same school. I wasn't at the different Arizona, right? It was the Sun Devils. Okay.
Yeah.
I always say I don't know. Like, I think I just made the connection there and felt, I know we haven't really talked about him that much either on this show. So I kind of, I think he's my pick for linebacker.
Yeah, love Keyshaun Elliott here, and you're spot on. He was at Arizona State. He was working out with Maxi Honichor on camera, but you know that he was taking a look at all of these other guys. They even have a corner out there too that could be an earlier round pick, and Keith Ashby, the second, I believe. So maybe not a corner for the Patriots that they're looking at drafting that high, but certainly with linebacker and the state of that linebacker room. It's taken us this long into the show to start talking about this position group. But Keyshaun Elliott, a downhill force at the linebacker position. And that seems to be what Zach Kerr has liked from his linebackers as well through 1 year of his regime as defensive coordinator, now officially in that title moving into 2026. So gets to take the reins a little bit more. And if that means anything like what we saw in that 2025-26 or early 2026 playoff run for the Patriots, that means that these linebackers are going to be aggressive in moving downhill towards the line of scrimmage, be a part of all of their pressure packages. So Keyshaun Elliott certainly fits in that room there. And it seems like as a character fit would do so as well. I'm going to stick with linebacker for mine here. And I think that there are a lot of these mid-round linebackers that the Patriots could be taking their pick from. Again, another reason why they may be comfortable from moving on from guys like Jack Gibbons and Marte Mapu and Jelani Tavai this offseason is because there is such a depth of talent in this. I think that, Tyler, before I get into this, there's an outside chance that the Patriots could be sitting there at 31 overall, and you already had a run on edge rushers, and the tackles went way earlier than you thought they were going to. And they sit there on draft night and surprise everyone and pick a guy like Jacob Rodriguez out of Texas Tech in the first round with the 31st overall pick. I don't think that that's necessarily out of the realm of possibility with how good a player like Jacob Rodriguez is. Led the FBS last year with 7 forced fumbles, 124 tackles. He was PFF's highest overall graded linebacker, and you're looking at him in that late first round, early second round range. So if he's the best player available on the board for the Patriots at that point, and we know that Mike Vrabel's already talked about wanting to draft best player available regardless of need. And I think that that's not necessarily how things always go. You would obviously want to draft best player available, but needs certainly still matter. And I think that they did last year at the top of the draft for the Patriots, if you look at the Will Campbell pick. But I think that there's a world where we could see right off the bat in round 1, the Patriots go out and target a linebacker. Like edge rusher, though, I think that this is a position that is meaty in the middle, and you can get some talent in the 3rd round, in the 4th round in this draft. And that's why my next guy at the linebacker position is Aiden Fisher, another player that we talked about with our mock draft 3.0, a team captain and really the heartbeat of that Indiana Hoosiers defense, not just this past season, but if you go back through his career over the last 3 years of his collegiate career, he totaled 316 tackles, 57 pressures, 6 sacks, 15 quarterback hits, and 35 hurries. He's been all over the field. He knows exactly where to be, and to a lesser extent, with a guy like Jacob Rodriguez, really does have that quarterback mindset on the defensive side of the football, where he's great at identifying what the offense is trying to do as the play develops and getting himself into a position where he can go out and make a play on the football, whether that be in the run game, in the pass game, or as part of the pressure package himself. Again, he's a little bit of a smaller player, and I think that's becoming a trend with a couple of my guys here. He's only 6'1", 232, but again, at the off-ball linebacker position, we're not always getting these huge 6'4", 250-pound guys anymore. They're a little bit more compact and can play in space, and that's what we've seen from Vrabel and building his linebacker core is he's been okay with drafting those guys that can range sideline to sideline, even if that means giving up a little bit in terms of overall size. The one concern that I do have with Aiden Fisher is overall athleticism. He ran a 4.76 40-yard dash, so a little bit on the slower end. So only 18 reps on the bench press. A lot of guys that didn't even participate in that, so I give him credit for actually going out there and going through all of the drills, even if he wasn't going to put up the top of the class numbers across the board. I really like a guy as a leader and a producer like Aiden Fisher to anchor long-term this Patriots linebacking core after the days of Christian Ellis and potentially Robert Spillane in a few years here.
Yeah, I like the pick too. Known as high IQ green dot leader, those 46 solo tackles, very impressive. Obviously, Indiana's coming into the NFL draft with a lot of buzz right now, but I mean, with the number one pick, and we know where that's going. But I like that we're bringing up Indiana in this draft too. So I completely agree with your points with how the Patriots could bring in a linebacker at this phase of the draft. So yeah. These are our final ones, or our final ones of the five.
We still have one more each before we get there. Yep.
There is a need, and look, I don't know. I wanted to put him in a day 3 sleeper picks, but I feel like you're going to scorn me for all this, for what I'm about to do here. But we are in an agreement that the Patriots are going to need to look at the tight end. And with the fact that Hunter Henry is in a final year of his contract, he is he's up there in going to take a tight end. I think we went in the 3rd or 4th round with a tight end. I think on all of our mock drafts, or just like a most recent one, I believe as well. But I wanted to go with a guy out of Georgia, Oscar Delp. I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Played 4 seasons in Georgia, appearing in 55 games, 34 starts, totaling 70 receptions, 854 yards, and 9 touchdowns. He's rated as a top tight end recruit. Nobody's really kind of ballparking where he's going to go in terms of which round. But he's a big guy, and he kind of meshes in well with the whole physicality and being able to block and being able to run. And I think that's something that the Patriots are going to need this year, with Hunter still out there getting catches and still getting reps, basically as a number 3 receiver, it feels like sometimes with Drake Maye. The only thing I am kind of concerned about is he is kind of coming off an injury that nobody even knew about until the NFL Combine. And I'm not trying to be an old school guy with football and being like, play hurt and whatnot. But he played his senior citizen with a hairline fracture on his foot, and no one knew about it till the NFL Combine. To me, that kind of just says how tough of a kid he is. And I think that's going to probably be attractive to Mike Vrabel. But again, big kid. And I think, this could be a 1-for-1 in terms of size, with Austin Hooper being out the door now. But so I wanted to go with a tight end. I wanted to mention a tight end. Maybe he should have been in my day 3 sleeper picks, but yeah.
No, Tyler, I like having him at this point in the list where you have him. This is a player that, when we've gone at least through the PFF mock draft simulator, is available on day 3, but I've seen a lot of smoke around him going much earlier in the draft. Some people have him all the way at the back end of the 2nd round through the 3rd round of the draft. And I think the interesting part about a player like Oscar Delp is he's shown you a lot as an inline blocker physically on the line of scrimmage, as you mentioned, but there's not a ton of proven production from him in the passing game. And in a Georgia offense that heavily featured Brock Bowers right before Oscar Delp's time there. And they actually played together in Bauer's final season at Georgia. So he was the second kind of tight end in the rotation behind Bowers. Everyone assumed that he was going to take over and just shoot to the moon like Bowers did, and that never really quite happened. You mentioned the injury history with him that we're just starting to learn about now, but I think projection-wise for him, there's a lot of confidence that this is going to be a player that is going to have a better NFL career than he had in college. I think that's a little bit rich for me to draft a player like that in the second or third round, if that's ultimately how it ends up going and he falls into that second kind of tier of tight ends in the draft here. We've talked about a few of them now through this point, through 3 mock drafts, really from round 7 all the way through the third round of the draft last week, where we traded up in the third round to grab Sam Roush out of Stanford. And Sam Roush is a player that I could have very easily had on my list here. I'm kind of surprised that that wasn't your selection at tight end, but I was pleasantly surprised to see Oscar Delp on this list, to get a chance to talk about him. You want to comment on Roush a little bit while we're kind of hovering around the discussion here?
I mean, I'm not remembering his stats off the top of my head here, but we took him in the third round last week or something, or third.
Yeah, we traded up for him in the third round.
I kind of realistically see the Patriots maybe doing something like that, like trading up to, if that were to fall in his lap. But again, like I think Roush kind of fits the two of them kind of fit a similar mold for me of just being a physical interior blocking tight end. I think Roush probably, correct me if I'm wrong, he might just kind of have more reps in terms of being able to catch the ball, but he still is kind of that big, bulky tight end. I don't know. I think maybe the reason why I didn't go with him is just because we talked about him last week, but I knew a tight end kind of needed to be brought to the table in the conversation, even if we stayed him in day 3 sleeper picks. But yeah, either or, a tight end of that nature, of that size, I think it's going to work out for the Patriots in the kind of murky areas in the middle of the draft. So I am a Sam Roush guy too as well. I think you're the one who made the pick last week, but again, I wanted to maybe shift away and try to find someone of that nature for this pick.
I agree. I thought of this the same exact way. We took Roush last week. We got a good opportunity to talk about him a little bit. I would definitely consider him like one of my guys in this draft cycle, 6'6", 267. He's got all the blocking measurables. He's got all the numbers as a receiver at Stanford. Unlike some people would suggest, he was 8th in the FBS in targets at the tight end position last year. He's had great production over the last couple of years. So I could definitely see him as being a fit for the Patriots. I think that he's going to get drafted a little bit too rich for where the Patriots ultimately end up taking a tight end, especially now considering the movement that they've had at the linebacker position. So it got me thinking about some of these other players, and one that I just kept going back to when I was doing my write-ups on these players and diving in on all the film and my research and looking at the numbers and where their strengths are, was a guy like Eli Raridon from Notre Dame. And a little bit surprising to me, I gave him a first glance at first, and especially at the NFL Combine, I looked at this guy and it was like, wow, he's way thinner than I thought he would be. He's very, it looks like on the numbers, he's a very big tight end. He's 6'6", 245 pounds, but when you see how that frame is actually distributed, it looks like he could put on another 10 or 15 pounds and be just fine. And I think that's ultimately what he's going to end up doing in the NFL, to be able to sustain more power as an inline blocker. But going back and watching him more, you didn't really see a drop off in his blocking ability, even with a little bit more of a slender frame on him. He's a very willing blocker. He's consistent at it. He brings effort all the time in that area. But Tyler, where this guy really shines is as a downfield receiver in the passing game. He led all FBS tight ends last year with 8 deep receptions on 10 targets. The only 2 other targets that he didn't end up coming down with were defensive pass interference calls. So he shows a great ability to be a playmaker vertically up the seams, on corner routes, down the field. And that's where the Patriots like to push the football. He's a very willing receiver going over the middle of the field. He shows great awareness, stopping and kind of making himself available to the quarterback in zone coverages, in the little spaces between those zones, in that intermediate area in the field. So I think a lot of his strengths profile well, kind of like you were talking about, as that long-term replacement for Hunter Henry. This is a guy that has taken plenty of snaps and was used more so this past year as that Y blocking tight end, but has also been in the past an F, like a move tight end, where they've used him as a big slot receiver. He certainly has the athleticism to take on a role like that. He had a 4.62 second 40-yard dash, so certainly one of the faster tight ends on this list. 36-inch vertical, 10-foot 3-inch broad jump, 20 reps on the bench press, and an RAS score of 9.66. Now, the concerns surrounding a guy like Raridon would be that he tore the same ACL twice in 2021, and then when he came back in 2022. But Tyler, I just gave you the testing numbers. Now 3 years removed, 4 years removed from those injuries, it doesn't seem to be impacting his athleticism at all, both on tape and in his testing numbers there at the combine. So I think we're far enough removed from that where we've gotten a good body of work. That was something that happened in the past. It's not always a precursor of things to come for him at the next level, but you could, if you're New England, get a little bit of extra value on him in the 4th round of this draft with him still being available. You have 2 4th-round picks, so you could go out there, identify a linebacker or a safety, like I mentioned early on in this list, and then go back and draft your tight end in Eli Raridon here out of Notre Dame, a guy that I feel like fits skill set wise very well with this Patriots offense at this point in time.
I like that you brought up his injuries, because that just brings, and the fact that he's bounced back, he's got a lot of resiliency, and I think that just aids in his draft stock really well with any team he goes to, knowing that they're not going to feel like he's such a bust after 2 or 3 years because he's so banged up. I mean, you obviously can't predict the future on these things either, but that is very impressive. 2 ACL tears, the same one. So I think wherever he lands, he's got a lot going for him right now in terms of draft stock coming in a couple weeks. So how do we cap this off now? Day 3 sleeper picks.
Yeah, now we transition to day 3 sleeper picks. We're going to keep these a little bit quicker hitters here. A couple of guys that I want to touch on, Tyler. I know a couple of guys that you want to touch on. I'll let you lead things off here, but we're looking at players that are going to most likely be picked on day 3 based on where their consensus board rankings currently have them projected.
Well, I'll kick things off real quick with a guy we talked about a couple weeks ago. I think it was Mock Draft 2.0. I actually was about to swap him into my top 5 here because he probably could have made it. I think when we did the A.J. Brown-esque draft where we disregarded the first round pretty much, he was our 3rd round pick. Devin Moore, Florida Gator, All-American at Naples High. So he's Florida born and bred. He's from Naples, Florida. Very impressive 4-point defensive cornerback, by the way. I should throw that out there. I should say his position as well. 40-yard dash in 4.5 seconds, 1.56 10-yard split. Production score at 80. Athleticism score at 64. Total score 65. I'm going off the combine here. He's got impressive height as a cornerback, which I think is going to aid pretty well in going up against a lot of the wide receivers I'm seeing that the Patriots are going to be going up against next year. I mean, I know a lot of the attention, or I should say lack thereof attention, is on Christian Gonzalez in terms of him being a shutdown corner. I think whoever is going to be filling in the years to come, there's going to be a lot of attention thrown their way because of what's going on because Gonzalez being such a good shutdown corner is what I'm trying to get at. I like the kid. Takes cues quickly from passers in short zone. Works great in the short zone. He has an opposing presence, is what a lot of his strengths have been. He's got a good press and length to slow release. He's also another thing that I think is going to aid him really well. Stopping the run. He's a great open field tackler. That's something we talked about already on the show and in the past few weeks. The Patriots want to probably attack the run game on defense really well to get a cornerback who can come off of a block, because we know wide receivers don't really like to block anyway to begin with. To make good open field tackles. I think he's I think he's a good fit. We picked him in mock draft, so I just kind of wanted to bring him back around again this time around.
Yeah, I really like that. I love a lot of the points that you made there about him. The size is definitely a plus. And when we're looking at boundary corners for the Patriots, I think that I have a piece coming up on some of my write-ups on cornerbacks, and Devin Moore is on that list. That'll be out this weekend. But for me, a prerequisite in the Vrabel regime was going to be for a boundary corner that they had to be at least 6 feet tall. And with Devin Moore being 6'3", 198, he more than checks that box. And you mentioned it, Tyler, the physicality and the willingness, not only to make plays down the field in the passing game, but to step up, shed blocks, and be an effective force near the line of scrimmage and help out in run support. I think that was a big turning point for Christian Gonzalez this past year. Was the Ravens started spamming runs over Christian Gonzalez's side of the field, and basically telling him, look, dude, you're going to have to make some tackles at some point in this game. And for him to kind of flip that switch mentality wise and go out there and stay aggressive and hunt down those opportunities to get involved in the backfield, I think worked wonders for Gonzalez last year. That's a trait that you already see with a guy like Devin Moore out of Florida. So I really like that. I'm going to switch sides of the ball for my first sleeper pick. And it's a guy, again, that we've talked quite a bit about here on the show, and a player, Tyler, that you actually first called to my attention in our very first mock draft. And I have fallen more and more and more in love with this guy over the draft season. Adam Randall out of Clemson. I have 2 Clemson Tigers on this list. We have 3 Clemson Tigers total on this list. But this guy, 6'2", 235 pounds, a converted wide receiver that now plays running back. This past year was his first year at the position, and he was named a team captain. Still a little bit of an upright runner through the hole, and definitely still some vision concerns. I think that's very natural for a player that's just adjusting to playing a new position, but he gives you all of the athletic traits and the size of like a Ramondre Stevenson-esque running back, one with receiver skills out of the backfield. I just see all of the different ways that a guy like Josh McDaniels can implore him into the offense. If you think back through the history of McDaniels here in New England, a guy like Cordero Patterson did very well and even stood in as the lead back for the Patriots at spots where they dealt with injuries in the running back room on the roster, and we're still able to have a very effective running game. Again, Adam Randall, another one of these guys that can provide some value for you in the kick return game, and especially with those new kickoff rules. The Patriots have wanted to put running backs back there as kick returners, or guys like Efton Chisholm, and I think that Adam Randall would be worlds better at that type of position, and a spot even on special teams where you could afford to use a lot more efficiency, start your drives past the 30-yard line instead of being pinned back deep in your own territory. That was a spot on the team that they didn't really have a whole lot of success last year, was in the kick return game. So as a rotational running back behind Ramondre Stevenson, behind Travion Henderson, a guy that you can use in a multitude of different ways, I think that you can get great value on him in day 3 of the draft. So thank you very much for turning me on to Adam Randall. Absolutely love him as a fit for the Patriots.
I do my best. So my next guy is someone you're probably maybe going to hope or wish that I went with just in my top 5, because he is on the offensive line, offensive guard, specifically Armaj Reed Adams out of Texas A&M. I believe originally started in Kansas, so to speak. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But I'll go into just some quick things here, but I really want to harp on one point that I, just kind of read about him. But, excuse me, earned second team All-American honors with in the 2025 season, considered a powerful, experienced blocker, 40-plus starts with he's got good length, high-level ability to operate in gap zone schemes. But one thing I just kind of wanted to bring up about him is he's he's kind of a leader, so to speak. And I look at the offense. That's just what a lot of people that have kind of reported on him have been. He's got very good leadership capabilities. And look, I think the offensive line we got, with a lot of the moving parts we've seen this offseason. And, Vera Tucker probably is going to maybe take on a little bit more of a leadership role, I would feel, just due to his veteran status, so to speak, now that he's a Patriot. But I could see this kid coming in here and in a few years, maybe taking things in control, so to speak, as the leader of this offense. Intense passion, sometimes characterized by bringing a chair to the field as a game time ritual. I don't know what that means. I didn't look it up yet on film, but I don't know. I think one thing that the Patriots offense, yes, Will Campbell's doing videos with Drake Maye and his wife, eating baked goods during the holiday season. That gives us a little bit of character. But I don't know, if you bring maybe someone like that to the offensive line and get this kind of physical, mean guy out there, that could be something interesting going forward. I just like that about it. And, maybe I should have brought him in a little more into our top 5 here, so to speak. I actually thought I did, but I think I got it backwards when I got on the air here. But regardless, I wanted to obviously address the offensive line and bring in a guard. I don't know what you think about that, but yeah.
Yeah, I love attacking the interior offensive line, especially on day 3 of the draft here. You brought in Elijah Vera Tucker. He has injury history, 3 season-ending injuries in 5 career seasons now for him. But you're hoping, of course, that he's able to kind of figure that out as he works his way into the lineup in Foxboro. But even on the other side of center from him, at right guard is Mike Onwenu, who is now on an expiring contract. A player that the Patriots initially drafted in the 5th round of the draft when he was selected. So you got some day 3 value on Mike Onwenu coming out of Michigan at first, and he ended up developing into your best starter along the offensive line over the course of the last handful of years here that he spent in Foxboro. But we don't know what that looks like for him after 2026, given the cap number that he's currently commanding. You have guys like Christian Gonzalez and Drake Maye, and if you bring in another contract like an A.J. Brown, you're only going to be able to feed so many mouths under the salary cap. And are you going to be able to pay a starting guard $25 million a year? I don't know that Mike Onwenu is going to be long for New England after 2026, given some of the other players that are going to be up for contracts. So get ahead of that a little bit early. Find some value on day 3, and just as you did with Mike Onwenu, use that as a developmental prospect that could ultimately step into the lineup beyond this season if you decide to move on from Mike Onwenu after this year. So really like that. I'm going to stay on the offensive side of the ball with my second day 3 sleeper, and a guy that we went out and drafted in mock draft 3.0, but I want to give him a little bit more love here, is Tyron Montgomery, the wide receiver out of John Carroll University. Tyler, you are fully on the Ty Montgomery train now too, I take it. You wrote an article on him. You want to jump in on this one too?
No, just real quick. I just had this thought to me when you sent me your list today, and I was like, yes, here he is again. I was just kind of like, if he gets, let's say he gets drafted by the Patriots, or he goes undrafted and the Pats pick him up or something, 6th, 7th round or undrafted, whatever, or who knows. We got to reach out to the organization. We got to get him on this show. We have championed this guy for so long. Like just let's get the Patriots to give us 15 minutes with him on a show like this, and let's see what happens. Because I don't know, like we championed him for so long, and it would be pretty cool. But go ahead, floor is yours.
Yeah, we've talked about the Ohio and the John Carroll connections already with the New England Patriots and Josh McDaniels and so many other people in that organization throughout the course of the years here. But Ty Montgomery is one of those rare prospects where it feels like the fit, not only culture-wise, but with the way that he plays on the field, he's probably going to end up profiling as a Z receiver at the next level, and a guy that we're not crazy for talking about as a day 3 sleeper, because he is definitely looking to be drafted in that 5th, 6th, 7th round range, right in there with the kind of numbers that he put up both at John Carroll, but also what he ended up doing at the Senior Bowl two power forward defensive backs all week long. Yeah. He was going up contested catch situations, jumping up and grabbing those balls away from first round picks and guys like Colton Hood that are going to be drafted right around the Patriots range at the end of the first round. He was going up and making plays over those guys. And not only just the contested catch situations, you want to see him get open against those guys too. And that's where I think Tyron Montgomery really is going to make a special name for himself as a later round pick in the draft, because he's a guy that was late to football. He started playing flag football during COVID and ended up earning a scholarship to Nicholls State with the film that he put out as a flag football player, ended up making his way over to John Carroll. And you see his basketball background, his initial sport, his basketball background, especially in his release packages at the line of scrimmage. He's able to give guys those little crossover moves, give them a little in and out before he makes his final cut, and just shake defenders with great short area quickness. He checked the box with a 4.5 40-yard dash at Toledo's pro day. John Carroll doesn't host a pro day every single year, so he had to go out and work with guys like Emmanuel McNeil-Warren out in Toledo and showcase his skills there. And I think that he held up very well against any of those other prospects, a few of which are going to be selections in the NFL draft. And again, Tyler, we talk about a developmental prospect at the wide receiver position. How about a guy that you can mold into becoming the type of receiver that can bounce inside and outside in a Josh McDaniels offense? We know that he wants his receivers to be able to play every single receiver position in both body makeup, athleticism, and the traits that Tyron Montgomery brings to the table. He checks all of those boxes for being an effective receiver in a Josh McDaniels system. We go back to guys like Julian Edelman in the past that were just transitioning to being wide receivers, selected on day 3 out of Kent State in the 7th round by the Patriots that year. And it took him a few years to really round out his game and become a valuable piece in the offense. But I think a bet that's worth willing to make with the current state of the wide receiver room in New England long-term, to be able to stash a guy like this potentially on the practice squad for the first year or two as you teach him to play the receiver position and then just unleash him a little bit later on in the offense. I think that as a long-term developmental project for the Patriots, Tyron Montgomery makes a whole heck of a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, no, it'd be an awesome sight to see him kind of go to the Patriots. That'd be a cool thing. Speaking of Ohio, I am going to jump over to an Ohio State Buckeye, Lorenzo Styles Jr., who comes with a lot of versatility. Originally started at Notre Dame in 2021 and 2022, played 2 seasons as a wide receiver. Now I'm going to harp on this a little more in just a sec. But he appeared in 26 games, recorded 30 receptions, 340 yards in 2022. He goes to Ohio State, and he moves from wide receiver to cornerback, nickelback. Pretty impressive, if you ask me. One kind of word that I've noticed in a lot of the descriptions about him, and I looked at some footage earlier today as well, is fluid. He just moves fluidly across the field. There's nothing really rigid about how he plays, just very fluid athleticism and elite ball skills. And, you know, what better way to kind of make it onto the Patriots, because you're also good at special teams. And that's one thing that I think New England always looks at. And they got him kind of reported as a good draft pick because he's a sub-package defensive back who can also contribute on special teams. I mean, for some reason, I don't know. When I was thinking about him today, I was thinking about the days of Troy Brown playing defense for some reason, even though Brown started as a wide receiver and all of a sudden Bill Belichick's, it was like 2006 or something. So it's like, a guy 2005 or something, like go and play. I think he played like corner or something or safety, but fast kid, 4.28 second, 40-yard dash. He got clocked in at. He's projected as a high potential nickel corner or nickel safety. But I who knows if he's also an Ohio State guy, and Vrabel loves Ohio State guys. So I think Vrabel is an Ohio State guy. So I wonder if this is kind of in his pool right now of who to look at later down the draft, day 3. It just jumped out at me. I think he could kind of check some boxes here, even if he's not on the field, day 1, even if they just put him on special teams in year 1. So yeah.
Yeah, love Lorenzo Styles. He's a guy that I think we've taken now a couple of times in our mock drafts in like the 6th round there, right at the tail end of the 6th round because of that versatility. Ran a 4.27 40 at the combine. So blazing speed for him. He gives you some kick return versatility. He had a 100-yard kick return touchdown this past season. And Tyler, I really like looking for some sort of sub-rotational player behind Marcus Jones at the nickel position there. And I think Styles could project to be that kind of player, at least early on in his career for the Patriots, playing a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage where you can unleash his athleticism on the defensive side of the ball a little bit more. So I'm going to stick on the defensive side of the ball with my final pick, and we're going all the way down to 219 overall on the consensus board, the 21st highest graded linebacker in the 2026 NFL draft or 2026 NFL draft. And Tyler, I think probably the name of all names on this list, at very least, in Red Murdoch, a linebacker out of the University at Buffalo. And if you haven't heard of Red Murdoch before, that's totally fine. But Red Murdoch is coming for you, Tyler, because he set the career forced fumbles record in NCAA football this past season with 17 career forced fumbles. He has a knack for going out and finding the football and taking it away from the offense. 328 career tackles, 139 stops, 42 pressures, 11 sacks, 25 hurries. This guy is always in the backfield. He's around the ball. He roams over the top of that second level of the defense and identifies lanes to crash down against rushers and make plays in the backfield against the quarterback. And he takes the football away. And for a guy that is going to be going very late in this draft, I think that's a very valuable asset to have as a player that is going to go on the field and he's just going to go and hunt for the football whenever he gets the opportunity to. And especially coming out of a small school like Buffalo, probably not going to get too many opportunities to run with the starters early on. So you know that when he's out there, he's definitely going to be playing with that violent mentality. That's what made his, money for him at the collegiate level. If he was actually making money at the collegiate level, that's okay nowadays. But we're not going to veer off too far in that direction. Off the field, Tyler, I think this guy may be even more impressive, though. He sounds like an absolute menace when he's between the white lines, but off the field, he was nominated this past year for the William V. Campbell Trophy, which is better known as the Academic Heisman. He graduated magna cum laude in 3 years in 2024 and in 2025, was named to the All-State Good Works team for his efforts in the community. He started his own company, Virginia Homework Helpers, that provides tutors for K through 12 students in his home state of Virginia. So this guy is a high character leader on the football field that just went out there and all he did was produce, whether it be tackles, sacks, pressuring the quarterback, getting stops in the run game, and going out and taking the football away. I think, of course, a projection for him and certainly a jump in the quality of opponent that he's going to be seeing on a week in, week out basis. But that's what you're looking for at this stage in the draft. We're talking about guys that could be drafted in the 6th and 7th round. And I think Red Murdoch just checks all of those boxes for me. And if you want to double up at any position in this draft, Tyler, I know we've talked about the potential of them taking 2 tight ends. We've talked about the potential of them going out and drafting for need along the defensive back, the offensive line. Are they going to take a tackle and a guard, maybe double up at that position? I think that linebacker, especially given what they've had to part in the offseason, may be the most likely position that nobody's talking about for this team to go out and double up at with a swing on a day 3 player. And Red Murdoch would be my pick for an off-ball linebacker there.
This is like the one name you dropped on me today that I didn't really get a chance to look up, and I'm just pulling up some stuff now. This is probably one of the best picks either you or I have ever done on this show, or this off-season, mock draft stuff or whatever. he gets to the Bahamas Bowl and he wins MVP, leading the bowl victory over Liberty with 13 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, and a pick six. He just sounds like a menace. And then you find, like, I mean, does he really even need to go to the NFL? He seems like he's got like a lot of smarts and, already has his own business. I don't know. This guy, plus the name Red Murdoch, like,
right?
It's kind of funny when I pull them up here, I'm looking off camera here on a Google search. A site that isn't ours already like has an article like why the Patriots should draft Red Murdoch. But
how about that?
I dig it. No, great pick. This kind of voids a lot of some things that I just picked. So yeah, no, I love the kid. Awesome.
Yeah, definitely a day 3 sleeper for me. Had to throw him in there. My wife has probably heard Red Murdoch's name 25 times over the course of the past 2 weeks as I've been diving deeper, especially in on these linebacker prospects, because how could you not fall in love with a kid like that and with a name like that? I think is just a fantastic. Yeah. I mean, Daredevil fans out there, Red Murdoch, right? So we're not going to talk too much about Daredevil, although we could. That'll be for the after the show. Tyler, any closing remarks on our best fits for the Patriots in the 2026 NFL Draft?
No, I mean, well, yeah, but obviously key is edge rusher. I think you and I believe, linebackers, offensive lines as well, offensive linemen. So I think we kind of covered a lot of what they're going to be looking at, just kind of what you and me think are the best at those positions, at least this week. This is obviously subject to change as the days and minutes go on leading up to the draft. So, I think really liked all your picks, especially Red Murdoch, still fresh in my head. I might be thinking about him all night tonight. I don't know. That's such a good pick, dude. I don't know, whatever you got to say to close out.
Yeah, no, I think that we did a good job of kind of looking at every range of the draft here and identifying where the positions of need are for the Patriots. Certainly there's some best player available that goes into that at each point of the draft, but I think that there are clear needs for this team that you have to shore up before they can strictly just be picking for best player available. And I think it's like that with most teams on a year in and year out basis. The Patriots, no exception this offseason. So that's kind of why I tiered my players the way that I did based on where they're going to be going in the NFL draft. But I think we got a good mix in of a bunch of different types of players that the Patriots could be looking at in just a few short weeks here. So guys, if this is your first touch point with us, we'd like to thank you for being here and for staying all the way to the end. For more from us on the Patriots, be sure to head over to the Patriots Roundtable website over at roundtable.io. And if you're enjoying what we do here with the podcast on a weekly basis, the best way that you could possibly support us is by joining as a member on the Roundtable website. It's fast, it's easy, and it's completely free. And your membership allows you to join the discussion directly with us. We're trying to build a great community of sports fans over there on the site, and your support would be greatly appreciated in helping us do that. So please head over to the roundtable.io website by using that link found right down in our description below and tell us what you think. Who do you want to see make their way up to Foxboro at the end of this month with the NFL draft? Let us know in the comments section below or over on the community boards over on the Patriots Roundtable website. We look forward to seeing you there. Alongside Tyler Geis, I'm Eddie Murata, and we're signing off until next time.